Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. I can't believe we are already kind of at the end of the season. And with the holidays coming up and our big end of year top 10 stuff happening soon, this is going to be the last time we have to talk about a lot of the shows we've been watching, and we're kind of not going to have time for a season preview, so it's strange times once again here for the podcast, but it does give us a lot of anime to talk about. So I think we're going to just go right into it after we introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I'm joined, as always, by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still with us. We're joined by G.
How's everybody doing?
Welcome back.
Yes, it's good to be back. You can't keep a good G down. I saw it takes two other members of the GLORIO chat to replace me.
For the record, G, I had nothing derogatory to say about you in your absence.
I did listen to the previous podcast. I think you guys did an able job of covering the anime of the season.
Yeah. And we're joined once again by Artemis.
Hey, who knew I would be back so soon?
Yeah, I think this is another first time you've been on 2 consecutive episodes.
Yeah, I think so.
That is just how the scheduling has been working out lately. So thank you for being on again.
Sure thing.
And yeah, we got a lot of anime to talk about. So
Do we?
As I mentioned, we're not going to have time to do a full preview show. But I did want to mention a couple of notable GLORIO favorite things that are coming up, and most importantly, High Card Season 2.
Oh yeah.
Of course, yeah.
I know we're all really excited for that. No, seriously though, what I really meant to say is Synduality Noir Season 2.
What are you talking about? There was no Synduality Noir Season 2. It ended in episode 13.
You guys are really excited to watch that, I'm sure, right?
No.
Anyway, okay. Joking, I could probably do this with like a half a dozen other shows, but
dude, there's a lot of like rough looking stuff in the next season.
Yeah, what we really want to talk about is GLORIO manga favorite Dungeon Meshi. The anime is happening next season.
Yeah.
Notably being animated by Trigger. I know, didn't they show the first episode at like Anime Expo or something? Did that ever get out?
I believe that is what happened, yes. So there are some like early reviews, so to speak, of like the first episode of Dungeon Meshi.
Yeah, and I think in Japan they're doing some sort of preview roadshow where you can see the first 3 episodes in theaters. Or
they're doing like a theatric preview. Yeah.
Are those actually available floating around yet, or that's just not?
Online, I don't believe so.
No.
Yeah, I mean there'd be no way to
purely
record those, right? So,
yes.
Yeah.
But
why don't you guys explain what Dungeon Meshi is?
Sure. So Dungeon Meshi is an anime. It's an adaptation of, I guess you could say, a fantasy comedy manga by Ryoko Kui, and the sort of basic premise. Excuse me. The basic premise of Dungeon Meshi is that a group of adventurers need to delve to the bottom of the dungeon to save their friend who was eaten by a dragon. The idea being that if they can reach the dragon and slay it before it has finished digesting their fellow party member, they can use, classic JRPG, or not even, like just classic RPG resurrection magic to save her. But bereft of supplies and resources, they must resort to hunting and feeding on the monsters that live in the dungeon. And sort of the core conceit of Dungeon Meshi is the sort of various trials and tribulations that happen to this hapless group of adventurers as they, both struggle with the, already standard obstacles of your classic RPG dungeon, but also how to prepare and cook various kind of classic fantasy monsters, right? Walking mushrooms, mermen, all
slimes,
yes, right,
living armor.
Yeah, all basically all the like kind of greatest hits of your classic fantasy RPG bestiary. Our heroes must find a way to cook and eat all of them.
So is it like half fantasy adventure, half cooking show?
Oh yes.
Yes.
That is definitely.
Is it it sounds very similar to the Mappa show Campfire Cooking in Another World? Is it?
I know what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about. Right. That's like an isekai. That's like a noted isekai show. Where the guy,
I think I vaguely remember that one.
It's basically just a cooking show. It's an isekai show, but it's about cooking. Yeah.
And like the thing in that one is he can Amazon in like spices and stuff from Earth.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, so I think just the part of Dungeon Meshi being a pure fantasy series, I think probably makes that pretty distinct from the show you're talking about. I would also say that like, I mean, Dungeon Meshi is a cooking show, but like the cooking is predicated on the adventures that they are having delving the dungeon, and
right.
I'd say like the thing about Dungeon Meshi, the thing that gives it the breathless praise you will probably see bandied about Dungeon Meshi online is that, like, irrespective of the premise or the actual subject matter appearing on screen, Dungeon Meshi is just straight up one of the best written manga of like the last 10 years. Like I'm not exaggerating when I say like Dungeon Meshi has some of the best character writing of like anything I've seen. Like the thing Dungeon Meshi does so well is like Ryoko Kui like masterfully weaves in like both world building and like characterization into the antics and story of Dungeon Meshi in ways that feel really organic and well considered.
Yes.
Like a lot of the very best jokes in Dungeon Meshi, and I think it's very easy to write off comedy as just like, just whatever makes people laugh. But Dungeon Meshi is a really good comedy because it understands its characters really, really well. And so the best jokes can only occur in Dungeon Meshi because of the specific makeup of this party. A great, to compare to like other comedies, it's like, I think like something like Kaguya is kind of probably similar in that in the sense of being like a very well written comedy because like the best jokes are grounded in the personality traits of its characters. I think that's definitely something Dungeon Meshi does really strongly. And I also think
also how they kind of like mix and match and combine the characters, right? Like,
oh yeah, totally, right?
Yeah.
Like the thing about the party, right, is like it's a 4-man party and each character really like stands out on their own. Like they each have a really identifiable tick, a gimmick, so to speak. And Dungeon Meshi just gets a ton of mileage out of just the ways in which these 4 characters intersect with each other and the world they exist in. And I am not about to say Dungeon Meshi is it gets better series, but like because I think Dungeon Meshi already starts very strongly as a story. But the thing that like works so well about it, the thing that like really grabs so many of us who love the manga, is it starts off as a comedy and stays a comedy largely all the way to the end. But the ways in which it introduces new concepts about the setting, new facets about the characters as the story progresses, just it's it's so natural that like you can't even point to a moment. Like there's no moment in Dungeon Meshi where you go, and this is where the story truly expanded. It's just 50 chapters pass and you feel like you've known these characters your entire lives. And I think it's really well done. And so and on some level I realize I'm just talking about the subject, the material of the adaptation here. And so I guess, in the context of the anime, it kind of makes the choice of Trigger to adapt this, I think, really interesting. Watching the PVs, I would say Trigger's art style is not a one-to-one match for the Dungeon Meshi manga. Like,
right.
I think they are doing their best with adapting the general style, but clearly Trigger is doing its own thing here. And I think that might be for the best, because Dungeon Meshi's the manga has a very intricate art style. Like, despite being a comedy, it has a very Ryoko Kui does not flex as often as, say, a Kentaro Miura or,
Right, I mean, who does, right? But yeah.
When she does, it kind of just makes you pause in a way that, it is the comedy actor. It is Adam Sandler showing up in Uncut Gems and making you go, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." And that's kind of what Ryoko Kui does sometimes in the manga. And so I think Trigger kind of taking it in their own direction, towards the strengths of anime, is probably a prudent decision, but I am curious to see how that will turn out in the long run.
Yeah. I don't think of the comedy in Dungeon Meshi as being similar to Trigger's style of comedy either. Right?
Right.
Yeah, when I saw the trailer, I mean, they seem to be making it feel like a very high energy, silly type of Trigger show, which is, I don't know if that really matches the tone of what you guys are talking about, but
sometimes it can, right? It's can, just not all the time.
I think
and I mean trailers. Trailers can be a lot of times not show you the whole picture too, right? So
yeah.
Who at Trigger is directing? I guess that's also a big part of.
So it's someone relatively new, or at least new to directing, I believe. It's Yoshihiro Miyajima, who has worked on various Trigger things in the past.
He's done a lot of episode directing.
Yes, that is a thing. He has mostly been an episode director. Sort of his probably most prominent role prior to this is he was assistant director on Dynazenon.
Okay.
This is his directorial debut.
Okay.
And probably just for better or worse, I try to keep tabs on Trigger, but I cannot remember or know the names of every single person who works there.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
I will say this is a name I am not as familiar with as say a Sushio or a Kai Igarashi. But
well, I will say, as someone who has not read the manga, but I've heard you guys talk about it a lot. I'm looking forward to it because it sounds like something that is very much in my wheelhouse, something I would enjoy. Right. So, I guess we'll see how they do the adaptation. I mean, I think we have a lot of faith in Trigger to make a good anime, but we're usually thinking about them doing original material, right?
I mean, so this is Trigger's second adaptation in second, right? In the history in their history as a studio.
Depends on how you want to count Ninja Slayer, but you shouldn't count Ninja Slayer.
You're right. No, it's third. You're right. Third adaptation. I apologize to Ninja Slayer.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Not too much more to say until we actually see it. So the other one I wanted to mention was Sengoku Youko. And Iro, maybe you want to explain what this one is?
This is Sengoku Youko is a manga by Satoshi Mizukami, who
GLORIO favorite.
who worked on Planet With and Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and its infamously terrible anime adaptation. And
the manga's good, we promise.
Hopefully we won't get a repeat of that this time with Sengoku Youko. Trailers seem, if not good, then fine, which is competent, which is all I'm asking for at this point.
Yeah,
my bar is so low.
It's being done by White Fox, and they can crank it up sometimes if they need to. So yeah,
this is essentially a feudal Japan action, supernatural action series is what I would say. In the vague Sengoku period, where you have your samurai and your demons and whatnot sort of clashing together, and like many other Satoshi Mizukami works, the beginning of it is kind of generic, and then as it progresses, his character writing and such really comes to the forefront and brings out the best in his series. Which
I mean, it's interesting that we're actually discussing these two shows together. I think in many ways, I think there are some parallels between Dungeon Meshi and Sengoku Youko in that, there is a strength to the premises of both. I don't want to I don't think Sengoku Youko is necessarily generic. It's just
sure.
Well, I think at the
time, I don't. At the beginning, I don't think it has a hook in the same way that Dungeon Meshi does.
Yes, but I do think at the end of the day, the strength is again, it's I don't
watching these characters grow, right?
You're right. I keep using the word natural and organic, and it's I don't want to pretend that these works are necessarily realistic. But what I do say is especially with Sengoku Youko, it's there's something very I can't think of a better word. Sorry, so I'm just going to keep using natural. It's just there's a very smooth transition in the ways in which you learn about and then grow to care about the characters in Sengoku Youko. That's kind of what is the strength of all Mizukami works, and I think does shine especially well in Sengoku Youko, which is to date his longest work.
Yes,
right?
I was going to say Sengoku Youko does the sort of thing that you see a lot in seinen manga and not necessarily very often elsewhere, which is it's a story that takes place over a couple decades, right, across the whole story. And so you are seeing some of these characters when they're young and as they grow up and learn more about the world and change, right, as opposed to a shonen battle series or something where what all of My Hero Academia is taking place over 1 year, right? Or something like that.
Or in the case of even when shonen does do time skips,
yes,
it is often just a excuse to give characters a new outfit, right?
It's
the jump from Naruto to Naruto Shippuden does not actually create a generational shift.
Right.
Just everybody gets a little taller.
Everyone gets taller, everyone gets a little stronger, and then we move on, right? But they're basically the same characters.
Whereas the thing that I'm not gonna spoil anything about Sengoku Youko, but one of the things that's very cool about it being a generation spanning story is the natural flow of time that arrives from that narrative conceit, right? So you have characters enter and leave the story because of the passage of time, and that and Mizukami uses it really effectively to to organically mix up the cast, right? And they don't always tell you, you'll have a character that shows up in one section of the story and then show up much later in a different section of the story, and they will be remarkably different. And sort of the thing that's fun about it is what what happened to you, man?
Yeah.
But you still see the traits of but he is still that guy from chapter so and so, but life happened to him, and it's funny because whatever. It's it's funny we're talking about this because also if we're all being super honest, and Goku Yoko is probably the most conventional and of Mizukami's works.
But, if you liked, for example, not necessarily it's not necessarily related to the content they're in, but the way that in Vinland Saga you get to see Thorfinn as a child, and then Thorfinn as a teen, and then Thorfinn as a man, right?
Yes.
And like how that progressed, and then how it progressed for other characters also in the story. Then there's a lot of that DNA in Sengoku Youko.
Totally.
Like, and the way it's structured.
Yeah. And again, to kind of echo your point at the start of all this, anime looks fine. I mean, it's look, this is not getting the Frieren treatment, to be sure, but it's also not being treated nearly as unfairly as Biscuit Hammer got. So, like, if I think on some level with a work like Sengoku Youko, which is like, again, not mainstream popular, right? Like, this is not. It's not a Dungeon Meshi. It's not a Frieren, right? Like, I think for something like this, I think realistically, your best hope is that the adaptation is competent enough to communicate the strengths of the source material.
Right.
Yep. That's all I want.
Well, I don't know anything about this one, but I have enjoyed the other things that Mizukami has written, so I am looking forward to checking this out for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That is
yes, there are other shows that we could talk about, but we don't have time to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, I mean, there are other things we just don't have time for a full preview or anything. I just wanted to mention those because I know you guys are fans of the manga. I've heard you talk about them many, many times over the years. So it was like, now that they're finally getting anime, we have to mention them beforehand, and we will definitely be talking more about them and a lot of other things once we get past all of our end of year stuff here. So stay tuned for that. All right. So moving on, we've got our final-ish thoughts on the shows from the current season. Since this is kind of our last opportunity to talk about a lot of these, I don't think anything is actually finished, but a lot of shows are like on their like penultimate episodes, right? Like we're only maybe got one episode left or something. So, Artemis, since you're here, we can start with my new boss's Goofy. Have they found a way to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, so this also does have one more episode to go. It's going to air next week. So I can, like, it's very predictable. I can see exactly where it's going to go. They ended the previous episode on... So they moved in together, like the main character and his boss moved in together
as friends and co-workers do.
Because of the stalking incident with his previous boss, because his previous boss knew where he lived and had sent threatening messages and called him and said, like, hey, I'm gonna be waiting for you, like, outside your apartment, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he moved in as a kind of emergency measure.
Very cool thing for a boss to do.
Right. But surprise, surprise, it's working out well and they're both happy at their new living arrangements. So the previous episode kind of quote-unquote cliffhanger left off where the main character's real estate agent rang up, like called up and said, hey, we've finally found the perfect apartment for you. And it cuts to his face with a reaction of like shock and disbelief and like, oh no, does that mean I'm going to have to move out kind of thing?
Yeah.
So we know, I'm 99% confident that the final episode will be him like almost about to move into a new place that is pretty much perfect for him, and then deciding that he's actually happier living with his boss.
Right.
Who was Goofy.
I was curious because with these types of shows, it's always like, how are they going to find a way? Because they can't just end, right? So like, how are they going to find like a stopping point? And there's always like
some sort of climactic season end,
some kind of like bit of drama they can stir up at the end. Right?
I think we honestly had that this episode. I think the episode that just aired was the one that resolved things as far as the kind of dramatic plot stuff goes, where his previous boss was stalking him and stuff, because he doesn't see his new boss or confront him, but he thinks he does. And he spends the episode running away from, like, literally physically running, like, around the aquarium to try and escape someone who he thinks is his old boss. And it turns out not to be his old boss at all. But he finally works up the courage before he realizes that to, like, say, hey, like, fuck off, basically.
Right.
Yeah, only to then realize that this is just, like, some other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it kind of resolved that whole, like, he finally was stood up for himself and just said, hey, I've had enough, kind of thing. And so the fact that person was not his boss is kind of neither here nor there. Like, he found the emotional strength
that was the important
to do what he had to do, right?
Part.
So I feel like this last episode is just kind of the window dressing to end on a nice
wrap
note,
everything up, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's still a solid show. I don't honestly have that much more to say about it after last week. But it has continued to be a very nice weekly watch, and I don't think it's going to be, anyone's anime of the year or anything, but it did a lot more than I gave it credit for when I first kind of saw the synopsis and all that stuff. So, if you have some time over the winter holidays between seasons, if there is such a thing as seasons anymore, then you never know. Maybe it will be up someone's alley.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like that they did find a kind of satisfying place to stop. That's what it's looking like.
I fully expect it to be to end just as pleasantly as it has gone throughout. So
nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that sounds good. Did you guys want to say anything more about Jujutsu Kaisen after last?
What even is there to say? I don't know, man.
Time.
What a
we left off last. You weren't here, but we left off on like Nobara dying and all that.
Yeah, just what a like fundamentally spiritually hollow show. I like it's like, like it's become such a buzzword, but like this show is soulless. Like it's so blatantly transparent with its like attempts to emotionally manipulate that like it doesn't hit anymore, dude. Like, you've played the same trick too many times. So the latest 2 episodes.
We're still fighting the same dude.
So we're still fighting Mahito, the like bio-shifter like demon guy, right? He's Dajoka, and he's killed 2 of Yuji's friends already. And he's really sad. He's like curled up in a ball, and he's like, "I'm so sad. My friends are dead. I can't fight." And who better to show up than everybody's favorite big muscular pervert? Todo is on the scene. Literally just flexes out of his shirt and just starts brawling with Mahito, and like, being a good brother to Yuji. And it's like, look, we all love Mr. Boogie Woogie, all right? Like, he's like one of the best characters in that show, right? Just strong himbo energy to that one, right? And it sucks because like we like like rationally, I'm like, I like this character. I like it when he shows up on screen, and I like it when he does cool things. And I could already feel in my bones, oh, they're gonna fuck him up too, aren't they?
Yep. You're saying the sentence, and I'm like, yep.
And so Todo inspires Yuji to get back into the fight. We have this like pretty like Todo is one of the best characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, not just because he's a really likable character, but because he has a really like he has one of the best powers in Jujutsu Kaisen in terms of like narrative clarity. Like, he claps his hands and he can switch places with two. He can switch the places of two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so that means that like when Todo fights, the narrator doesn't need to fucking butt in and be like,
and this is how this power works. Yeah.
Right. Don't need that, right? You just, like, visually, he claps his hands, you hear the sound effect of the clap, and then something fucking badass happens on screen, right? And, like, that's all you need to know, right? And so it works, again, like, from that perspective, from a presentational perspective, Todo arriving on the screen and beating ass works. And then the second of the two episodes happens where, like, you know, stop me if you've heard this before, from Jujutsu Kaisen. Todo fatally sacrifices himself.
Oh, God.
To give Yuji a chance to land the final blow.
What is Yuji doing this whole time while his friends are dying around him?
Punching?
Is he just like watching? Is it one of those things?
He is like fighting still, just like this bad guy can.
His friends have to like die to like create openings for him or
also,
something.
It's also like really unsatisfying because this villain's power is like flesh manipulation, and so explicitly like damage doesn't show on him, right?
Right.
Because so he just fixes his body. You're punching away his like soul HP. And but it's like, so we've been fighting this dude for like 5 episodes straight, and it's like it seems like it's just doing nothing,
right?
And except for when they have to look at the camera and say he's definitely down to 40%, you guys.
Yeah, like it's so bad, right? Like it's one of like this is one of those things about like shonen power sets where like you have to really consider what you're writing and how that will like affect how your story is perceived as time goes on. And this is a big issue, right? Because like the narrator's constantly like, Mahito's really beat up, guys, I swear. And it's like, he looks the same as he did 5 episodes ago.
He's still half laughing and cackling and
this is why like, Frieza has 4 forms, right?
Yes, right. So you can cope and be like, well, Piccolo, he kind of beat up Frieza in his second form, like you can have that that cope to convince you that the side characters actually did anything,
right?
And you don't get that with Jujutsu Kaisen because to be clear, Todo does not like actually die, but what happens is Mahito cuts off one of his arms, and in case you forgot, his power is clapping,
right?
And,
so he can't.
Turns out in the
universe,
it turns out in Jujutsu Kaisen you can't one hand clap. And so, like, Todo's like, he's taking out my hand. I have, like, he explains that I have, like, 30 seconds left of spiritual energy before I'm done for good. And so he wills his, like, tall, busty, idol waifu into existence. And they do this, like, dance if you want to win choreographed duo fight against Mahito.
In his brain, like, really?
Yeah,
Todo's mind palace.
Yeah, Todo's mind palace wills a second punching hand in the form of his fake idol waifu, and like I don't know how that actually works practically, but it's really fucking cool. And then at the end of it, Todo explicitly looks at the camera and says, "I will never be able to fight ever again. This is it for me as a character in the story of Jujutsu
Woogie
Kaisen.
Is already dead."
Yes, and I'm like, why would you say that?
Yeah. To what end? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all just so Yuji can punch Mahito again, but really hard this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just we've been spent literally 5 episodes fighting this guy.
One part of that whole like synopsis sounded really good, and the rest sounded absolute trash.
It's just exhausting because it feels like nothing has stakes, and then they keep telling us there's definitely a lot of stakes. Everybody, it's like, are you sure? Yeah, because
we're killing so many characters.
Are you sure? We've just watched these guys fist fight for 5 episodes straight, and nothing has changed except other characters have died to facilitate them having a fist fight for these 5 episodes. It's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, and so like the fight looks like it's over by the end of this episode. Like Mahito is running away. He's like, it's the whole like, oh, now that the villain is laid low, he's like scrabbling on the ground like a little freak begging for forgiveness, right? And you're supposed to like you're supposed to be like feeling bold and right because Yuji's just like walking over being like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking beat you up for what you did to my friends. And I guess it's meant to be like an emotional catharsis, but we don't care anymore.
Yeah. Right.
And then here's the real kicker. Here's the real fucking kicker. Me and Iro arrived at this really fucked up realization at the end of the last episode. Mahito, the guy they've been fighting for the last 5 episodes, he's Nappa.
Yeah.
He's not even the final villain of this arc, because then the true final villain of the arc shows up in the last minute of the episode.
The guy who put Gojo in a box or whatever, right? Like,
right? God. It's like they do the whole, well, now Vegeta's gonna fight for real now, and it's like, yeah, it's
how disappointing.
I know, right? Like, what a shame. Like,
the show had something going at some point.
It did. I liked these characters. They were fun when they were just being dirtbags to each other. Remember when Maki caught a bullet with her bare hands? That was cool.
Yeah. Now here we are, like 30 episodes later.
I know, yeah. Oh, man.
Well,
yep. Just all the shonen battle shows seem to fall into the same traps. I don't know what we were expecting.
It's just a question of when. Yeah. Is it 30 episodes or is it 50 episodes, right? It's all the same in the end.
Well, thank you both for your service in watching this so that I don't have to.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
You're going to have to get yourself some new canaries.
Yeah. Again, it's very disappointing that, they had something going and they just had to fall back on the same old thing these shows
every season, or not every season, but every few seasons, I'll be like, maybe this will be finally the big shonen franchise that I will end up watching and actually enjoying. Maybe I should actually give it a try and stop being close-minded. And then you guys come along and I'm like, nope, it's all still shit. Never mind.
Yep. No, yeah.
we don't have time for it in this podcast, but there's something like indelible about the appeal of a good shonen that I think has just like brain poisoned like some of us, and so we'll all watch.
It was like the original form of like. It was like the first anime like I became aware of, right? Like
right.
So I see this Dragon Ball Z as a kid. I'm like, wow, this is the sickest thing ever, right?
I think with the shonen thing, it's like the formula in itself
it's too
is
deep, right?
good,
it's too deeply ingrained.
Because they keep doing the exact same thing, it's like whatever the first shonen you watch, you'll probably enjoy, especially if you watch it when you're a kid. But then everything after that is gonna be like, this is exactly the same.
It's like diminishing returns there.
But for
the first one I watched is Dragon Ball Z, and everything else I compare to Dragon Ball Z. I'm like, we're still using
Dragon Ball Z with ghosts, Dragon Ball Z with pirates, Dragon Ball Z with swords.
We're still talking about Nappa and Vegeta and Frieza here because
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Doing the same exact.
It's our shared frame of reference for like anime conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
It's childhood nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So you guys are all really, really looking forward to Daima, right?
Oh boy, Dragon Ball babies. No, I read the original manga from start to finish a couple years ago, and I went, wow, yep, that's a really good like thing by itself, and I don't care about the rest of it. Yep. I'm sure glad it ended, and Toriyama can lean back and draw weird robots.
Like, keep collecting that paycheck and draw your weird robots. Yeah. All right, let's move on. So the Apothecary Diaries, that is continuing next season.
Yes, it is.
Right. So.
Yep.
I don't know if did anything special happen in the past 2 episodes?
Yeah, kind of did.
They're cracking.
Okay, I wasn't expecting this, but yes,
of sorts. Sure. Right.
All right.
Still tracking the culprit behind the poisoning incident at the big party. Right.
Oh, so we get some plot.
Yeah, and it's like we're like complex plot that ties into like backstories and stuff.
And like the kind of interesting thing here, right, is like a lot of good mysteries, right? the sort of thing that happens in the last episode. So I did not watch this week's episode.
Oh, okay.
I did watch.
Oh no!
I know
that reveals all the.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like you guys could. I mean, I would prefer you be vague, but if you need to talk about it, feel free to talk about it. I'm not like that deeply invested here, but so I will just speak to like my knowledge of what I've seen so far is like it kind of does the fun thing of. Well, that was the big mystery, but there's a lot of small mysteries to solve. And wouldn't you know it, the small mysteries eventually tie back to the big mystery. And I think they've done a surprisingly elegant job of that for the type of show this is. But it sounds like they dropped some bombshells in this latest one. I feel like I was starting to pick up on some of the implications from the prior episode, but
the sort of like thing happening in the palace is the oldest concubine is leaving the palace, is being let go basically, and we get into like her whole backstory deal, which is that she was basically childhood friends with the current emperor she's the one whose child died like in episode 1. The crown prince, and oh wait, no, that's wrong. Oh my god, I'm mixing myself up. Nope, that's not her. She gave birth to a child like 20 years ago, which died, and she's become like the birth was so traumatic that she can no longer have children, but she was still kept around as a concubine. And so the whole thing is she's leaving the palace. So everyone's up in a tizzy because she's leaving, but some evidence points to stuff that's going on in her section, and we have to investigate that, and that leads into all the other stuff.
Going on, right? I can see you trying to be super vague, and it's just not helping.
Look, if you got to talk about it, just talk about it. I mean,
so
I'll get to it.
Her like main lady in waiting is sort of being presented as the culprit here for complicated reasons involving honey and whether and honey being poisonous to infants and whatnot.
Wait, is that
real?
Look at your container of honey, and it'll say on it, "Do not feed to anyone under 1 year of age."
All right, fair enough.
I guess these are true. Yeah.
All right. I'll trust you on that one, Artemis. Just look. I'm not looking at. I'm not usually thinking about.
Well, I don't know about. I think poisonous might not be exactly the right word, but it would apply to them for sure. Like they would have just.
It's not as refined honey, right?
Yeah, but it's not. It's not safe to give to infants.
All right.
That's true.
It's good to know.
Good to know, yeah.
And it gets into how, when she gave birth like 20 years ago, the doctor who, it was the same time as the Empress Dowager was giving birth to a child, and the doctor who was trying to oversee these was Mao Mao's father, which is why he is now hobbled in the back alleys, way overqualified for his position as a back alley doctor. And whatnot, and as the Empress Dowager and Consort Ardua were giving birth, one of these babies died and one didn't, and and Jinshi sure looks a lot like her.
Yeah. So I was already beginning to suspect some of these things because the scene in the prior episode that has, I guess now it's obvious it's the concubine who is like drinking on the wall or whatever.
Right.
I was like, is that Jinshi?
Right.
I was like, and then that's where it clicks, like, wow, they kind of look the same, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then, like at the very end of the episode, there's one final scene where they're letting all the relatives of the handmaid who was executed know of her death. Because they're going to send out, those little kind of totem things with the person's name on it to all her surviving relatives. But Mao Mao her name is there. So
she's connected to this somehow, right?
I guess we're implying. I don't know exactly how close a relation, but
I think I got it.
Right.
I'm not even watching the show, and I think
this truly is some YA novel shit. Huh?
Yeah.
Just like, this girl's not like the others. She's smarter than them, and she's secretly super pretty
we
and
sure
a secret
have
princess.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
And we sure have never mentioned her mother now, have we, so far?
Yeah.
This is actually really funny to listen. This is really funny to listen to, considering what I know about what happens later.
Sure.
Interesting.
To be clear, that she was connected to, like, she was involved with, like, the people who kidnapped Bao Bao to bring her to the palace. Something like that. And so maybe she caused Bao to be taken into the inner palace, where maybe she's involved with all this shit, right?
Yeah, it's that is also like vaguely implied at the like the very tight, like the last sort of 10 seconds of the episode.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've built up all this intrigue in the palace, like the threads are starting to weave in together, right? With each other.
We got our mid series climax here.
Yeah.
Right.
And the next,
see, you guys
at the start of the series, I was like, does this really deserve 2 cores? And now I'm like, man, if they tried to whizzle through this in a 12 or 13 episodes, I mean, it would have been a hot mess.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. You guys, because you guys watched the most recent episode, you're all like wound up about, this conspiracy and the plot reveals. Meanwhile, I'm over here being like, haha, look at that screenshot of Mao Mao asking for booze like a baby.
Yes, that is good. Yes. Yeah. Hey, we were talking about, like recently we were talking about how it's like anime never shows underage drinking.
Yeah.
And Mao Mao is out here choking down booze, just slamming that shit.
It's not underage drinking if it's legal in the setting.
I feel like there's been a couple other shows recently that have showed underage drinking. I can't remember right now, but
I'm sure if it was set in either a completely fictionalized or like deeply obviously historical kind of pseudo universe or whatever, then sure.
And I guess it kind of fits because, like, if you really think about it, alcohol is simply just the most socially acceptable poison to drink. So it makes sense that Mao Mao would be a fucking alcoholic, I guess. But is this the real meta going forward? Just like, people are talking about the topless meta in Twitch. Is the new meta to avoid censorship in anime is just to, like, in your first episode, have a character say offhand, in our setting, we don't have a drinking age law.
Yeah. Oh man, yes.
Actually, I think Migi and Dali, there was a bit where they were drinking alcohol.
Yeah,
that sounds like something that would happen in that show.
It's like there's the goofy sequence where, like, they're talking through the plot and she's just holding that bottle that's evidence booze and just continuously drinking from it as they're talking through the plot, right? Regarding
Look, alcohol is humanity's friend. How can we abandon a friend?
Indeed.
Very good.
My goodness. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's plot thickens, I guess, on that one.
Yeah,
and that we'll be carrying on into next season, so we'll have more opportunities to talk about that.
Yep.
Let's move along. Talk about Spy Family, which I don't think is continuing. Right, that is ending this.
Yeah.
Okay. So. By continuing, I mean it is not
to next season.
It is not. It is not going to be airing more next season. But I would be shocked if we do not see more at some point next year.
I mean,
right?
the movie's
also
coming out
the
soon.
movie, right?
Yeah, and there's the movie
and Crunchyroll is streaming it too next year. So we're not going to have to wait.
Oh, that's okay.
For it to like appear in
if
US
I'm checking, I was just gonna say it looks like the movie is gonna come out like almost the same day as the last episode of the current season. So I wonder if they lined that up intentionally.
Probably keep the train rolling. But we got a little cool down after all the murder from the boat arc.
Boat arc is over. Finally,
we had the actual forgers going on vacation, which wasn't even really funny. It was just like
And here's their reward for going through all this stuff. They get to have fun, happy family times.
Like if there's one criticism I might have of this season, I feel like we have had a lot of those insert song montages.
It is No Name.
Yeah, the No Name has to fit a certain number of those in, and everyone can totally work on, right?
Yeah, I guess so, right? Contractually obligated, but yeah, so that was fine, and the bit with like Anya trying to convince everybody she went on this amazing vacation was pretty funny.
Relatable, very relatable. I believe
these children haven't heard of the amazing Sickle and Chain Barnaby.
Yeah, yes.
Saragama Barnaby.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And then from there we're back to we got to get around to we got to give everybody half an episode, right? So
it's back to antics.
We had the I thought the Becky bit was a lot funnier than I was expecting because
yeah,
I agree. I was preparing for not I won't say mid episode because Spy Family doesn't. I feel like that's not fair. Spy Family doesn't do mid; it just does very good and cool.
Right.
But this was better than I had assumed it would be, just based on like the super quick preview.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a very thin little girl has crush on adult man joke.
Yes,
but they get so much mileage out of my favorite bit of humor with Spy Family, which is everyone is a dumbass.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to look at the premise and be like, oh, one of these, right? Just Becky's boy crazy, right? And I think the thing that works well, right, is like it reminds you at the end of the day, these are very small children with. Like sure, is Anya dumber than the average small child? Yes, but like all these children are children, right? They have very skewed, narrow conceptions of the things they're talking about, right? Like, does Becky even know what marriage is, right? Or is it just the things she sees?
She just saw Berlin in love and made it her personality.
Parroting back from her shows, yeah.
Exactly right, and so and same thing like with all her taboo 100% kill rate techniques, right?
Right.
Everybody knows when you whip your hair like this, it makes men go crazy.
Yeah, Shades of Frieren a couple weeks ago trying to seduce people, right?
For using the sexy beam,
but just the fact that everybody's like, and especially like with Lloyd and Yor, how they're so extremely competent at their jobs, but they're so dumb. Like,
right? I mean Yor is the classic. Yeah. Like she's like going back weirdly to Dragon Ball Z. She's like Goku Super Saiyan. Like I guess I just didn't realize my own strength.
That's
you know what I mean? Like she's the himbo of this series.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that they get a lot of mileage, and I think even if the Fiona section is like not quite as strong because it's kind of just a montage of like
it's just kind of like what has Fiona been doing? Yeah,
right.
I feel like they put it there just to remind us of how great that tennis arc was.
Yes, it's but I think like both still tie into the broader joke, right, of like these various characters who are like really attracted to Lloyd and are constantly foiled by Yor like not even trying, right? Just accidentally like showing them up completely in ways they can't even conceive of, right? Just
right.
Just let me casually hit this like hammer like strength challenge and
which but what I'm saying is like that whole thing is a result of them just being complete dumbasses. Like that meant nothing.
Yeah.
Like that. But in their mind, like just not understanding the situation, is very good.
I think like the reality, right, is after something as large as the boat arc, I don't think Spy Family is going to like pursue any other like long-term plots with the time it has left. Yeah. So it does kind of make sense, even if the pacing is a little odd, to end on, a bunch of filler, I guess, if you want to.
Are there any other side characters that didn't get their segment yet and that need to get a segment?
I guess, yeah. Can we bring back the like very elegant or like headmaster? I wouldn't mind some more bits.
Henderson will get some time to shine. Well, if not this season, then definitely in the inevitable season 3 they announce. There will definitely be some good Henderson moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they've only got, I don't know, 1 or 2 episodes left, I don't know what we're on, then they'll probably need to wrap it up with the Forgers again, I'm assuming. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's a good time. I think especially winding down off the big arc is, it's fun to catch up with everybody, and
right.
these are
And I don't want a cliffhanger either. Like I'm not here for Spy Family to give me
plot.
Like the action and thrills are great, and I'm all there for it too.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm actually there for,
Yeah.
And if it ends on a filler, I honestly couldn't ask for more from Spy Family.
I mean, I do wonder if it'll be like kind of the end of season 1 where they throw you a little bone on the the overall plot.
Yeah, I mean they'll probably like set up a thing, right? I mean,
right.
I'm grasping in the dark here. I don't remember, like, I think Eero can back me up on this, right? Like, when we see any given episode of Spy Family, we immediately go, oh, right, yeah, that story, right? That chapter. But we could not, like, confidently tell you, like,
right, what's the next chapter is going to be, or
right. Like I can like, I know there are certain things this story will do in a hypothetical season 3 where it's like, oh yeah, they're probably going to cover this or that, but the specifics I cannot say in confidence. So
perhaps they'll just end setting up the movie, right? Like,
yeah, that could be. They might very well do that. Because there are more dramatic arcs down the line. Like I can say that, but where they are specifically, I don't remember. So I don't know if they would set those up this season or just save that for like next season entirely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Last joke I'll shout out for now. I really like the joke when Anya's reading Becky's mind and it's all like emojis or something.
Oh yeah,
it's very good.
Yeah, she's just so flustered that she's literally like unsend thumbs up, like
yeah.
I don't know what else was there. Skull and crossbones, just a bunch
and
of
Anya's like literally just reading them as they are appearing, and there's a great visual gag too. But yeah, anyway, Spy Family's good.
Yeah, sure is.
Let's talk about Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which is also continuing into next season. But so we are, it feels like we've got a long way to go. Like we've just introduced our new party member, and these episodes kind of, or a good chunk of these episodes, or the first one anyway, is like kind of establishing his position in the party dynamic, right?
Yeah,
right.
Which is, he's. I'm not going to say he's definitely not the adult in the room, but he's perhaps has more
bit more
emotional maturity, if you will, than
at like 25 or what have you. He's the resident
he's
old
like
man
at 30
character.
at most, right?
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, they continue to lean to the thing, right, of like Sane, despite being technically only the second oldest member of the party, has probably the most, in some regards, emotional maturity. Right. Like Frieren, like, is, I mean, she's emotionally detached. She can be kind of bratty sometimes, right? Like, despite being older than anybody else by like multiple like
hundreds
zeros,
of years. Yes.
Like, she did spend most of it in isolation, right? And so in that way, Sane does kind of get a fun edge in lived experience, especially when he's dealing with people like closer to his age, right? Like he sees what Stark and Fern are doing, and he's like, kids, right?
Oh, these kids.
And they make it a point to like highlight that Fern goes to him for advice and not Frieren, right? Like it's
yes.
So, and he gets to show off his capabilities because everybody in this party has to be super powerful, right?
Of course, yes.
Is that?
I definitely want to steal that giant plant fight for a D&D encounter. But yes,
I think that's in the second of these two episodes, right?
No, that was in the first one, right? When they fight the plant, because the second episode is when they go to when Stark has.
I think those were two parts of one episode.
No, those are two parts of the same episode.
Oh, you know what? I watched them like back to back. So
no, I know it's because like they are shoving, or not shoving, that they're putting these like one-off chapters like into the same episode. I think. Oh, yes, now I remember. I do want to talk about episode 14 a little bit, just because it does have like. I mean, the like, the JRPG adventure stuff is good, but I also do really like when the show does get back to like the core conceit of the story, which is Frieren, like, you know, wrangling with the kind of complex like feelings she had about the relationships in her life, right? And the sort of melancholy wistfulness that comes from realizing far, far too late what those little moments mean, right? And we so, you know, episode 14, it's about the ring, right? It's about Himmel's ring, right? We find out that you know, in the same way that Stark had to buy a gift for Fern, around the same leg in the journey, Himmel bought a ring for Frieren, right? And you know, to Frieren at the time, it was just a bauble from a fellow party member, and she is sort of subconsciously quite sentimental about it, even if she herself does not immediately know why. It's just that it's something she cares deeply for, right? It is a keepsake from someone she valued greatly in her life. And, you know, to the point where, like, when she loses it after a monster attack, she spends a significant amount of time looking for it, right? Like, and, you know, kind of the whole thing, right, is, you know, the eventual arc of the story, right, is, oh yes, you know, kind of classic. Oh, that flower represents everlasting love. You know, when you give that as a gift to a person, that's what you're declaring. And, you know, the implication, of course, like Stark did it unknowingly, right? Because, you know, he's not very smart. But Himmel most certainly knew what he was doing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so you get that great bit where Frieren finally like connects the dots, and she's like, "Oh, that's what it meant, right?" Like, but it's too late now to do anything about it, right? It's much too late to do anything about it. But, you know, those feelings still meant something, and she recognizes that, she internalizes it, even if she can't do anything about it anymore. But and I think stuff like that is like, those are the smaller moments where I think like this show really.
And what I really love is, like, they have the we see the flashback, but there's no like Frieren's inner monologue being like, oh my god, that's what he meant. Like, you just know, like, they don't have to tell you, right? And I feel like a lot of lesser shows would have something like that where you hear her inner thoughts or something, and it's like, oh, he must have been in love with me. How could I have not realized? And it's like, no, you don't need somebody to say that. You can piece it all together. You know,
this is where I think like the strength of the strength of a good like anime can also shine, right? It's not just in the big budget that lets you do cool fight scenes. It's also having talented enough animators to like show that subtlety purely through facial expressions. Like Frieren
it helps that this show is like looks amazing. Like,
right,
really,
you know, she has her silent moment of realization. You know, she acknowledges it, and then she moves on, and I think it's very well done.
Yeah.
And then next episode, she blasts a plant. And that also looks cool.
Yeah. I guess I tied that together because it's kind of like the tail end of, you know, getting to know
Sane,
Sane, right? So that was very cool. I like that, even though Frieren is like super overpowered, like, they don't abuse that, like, so like in the few key moments that they actually do show it, it's kind of badass, like.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Like, if it was like every episode ended with Frieren blasting a monster, then it would be like, all right, fine. But this is like, you know, every 5 or 6 episodes maybe she has to do something like this, and it ends up being pretty cool because, like, in this case, she's like, the plant was putting everybody to sleep, and he could only wake her up for like 5 seconds. She's like, no, I'll be good. Just wake me up. And finally he does
when you need it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
she
5
just
seconds
instantly
is one turn in D&D. It's all you need, right?
Exactly. This is why I want to steal that. That's for a D&D. I could definitely make something out of this. But anyway, so that was good. I felt kind of mostly like a power level check for God, I can't remember his name. We just said it 30 seconds ago.
Sane. I know.
Sane. Well, what's messing me up is I think they've been pronouncing it Sign.
Oh,
but like,
maybe you're right.
Sign,
but it's spelled where it looks like it should be Sane, but I don't know. Kind of like Frieren, however
Frieren
was saying that. Frieren, whatever.
I do think it's very funny how blatantly that episode is just like, if this member of the party hadn't joined, they'd all be fucked.
Yes. That's
right? Like,
they would simply load a save. I mean,
right? Like, it's the most like, oh, only Aquaman can solve the danger this week.
Right.
Like,
only Aquaman can talk to the dolphin to tell us what happened.
Right. It's like, oh, so it's like, if Satan hadn't joined the party when he did, would they have just died here? Like,
pretty much, yeah.
I guess
that would be eternally put this. Well, yeah, no, they would all get fed on by the planet.
Yeah,
but anyway,
yeah, and then we get the whole Stark like segment where he has to pretend to be somebody else and get just an excuse to get everybody dressed up for a party, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
basically.
Which is also another classic JRPG like filler arc, right? Is like everybody's got to prepare for the opera or whatever.
Zella's asked to pretend to be the opera singer.
Yes, but
and you got to work in the most slow burning romance elements of all time.
These two awkward teens.
Yeah. Or whatever's going on.
It does give some Stark some more like some more screen time to kind of be a character other than the cowardly lion, right? Like, like because like the element here is that Stark is playing is masquerading as the local lord's recently deceased son, right? That he's a almost a 1-to-1 copy of, right? And kind of getting this idea that like both the men in this situation, Stark and the Lord, are people who are, living with survivor's guilt, right? Like having been, the one to survive their given like situation, and like just the feeling that like, hey, like you kind of have to work through this on your own, right? Like you can't. I can't be your replacement son, essentially, right? Like that's like we all have our own journeys here, and I mean that's kind of all there is to it. But I can't appreciate that a story like this does find the time to give the other characters moments to shine. I think it is the strength of the relatively small size of the party, right? Like with so few characters, it kind of a combination of there being so few characters and them constantly being on a forward-moving journey. In a lot of ways, Frieren is able to like organically avoid the pitfalls of I think a lot of manga and anime of just like bloating the cast over time.
Yeah, because we can always move on somewhere else. Like
yeah. So that show also. Still very good.
Lots of lovely cloth flowing around, animation and such. Like, they are bringing it even in non-action moments, right? It's like what every 2 episodes somebody puts on a cloak and it's like insanely well animated, right?
Yeah.
We also get Fern double fisting donuts.
Right, yes, very good. Yes. Just the montage of Stark being trained to play the role of the Lord's son. Just Fern and Frieren just pigging out. Just
yeah.
It's very good.
Hell yeah.
Between that and the giant hamburgers, which I feel like I have to mention every time. It's great food. Okay. Let's talk about Migi and Dali.
This show seems like a ride.
Yeah. Everything's out in the open now because I think there's only 1 episode left. All secrets that I at least from what I can tell, all secrets have been revealed. I don't want to say I'm disappointed, but nothing is really surprising or shocking in a way that I was maybe expecting. They telegraph
it to go crazier, or
so they kind of telegraph everything that's going to happen, and then the one missing piece, which is kind of like what was the deal with their mother being in that house, was kind of the most conventional, easiest to guess answer. So if we want to throw the spoiler flags up here, because this really will kind of ruin the show if you're at all interested in watching Migi and Dali, skip ahead or something. But basically everything gets revealed that this whole thing stems from the plot of the mother of this rich family who was trying to build her perfect life in her perfect home in the perfect little town and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she has her perfect husband who's like a good-looking, wealthy doctor guy, and she was going to have her perfect 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and everything was going to be great. And it turns out, so Migi and Dali's mother was like the, I guess the housekeeper that they hire.
Sure, the maid,
okay.
and we had some. we have an illegitimate child situation here.
Yes. So, well, it's a little more complicated than that. In that, the mother finds out her plans of having a perfect family are really ruined because she can't have children.
Okay.
And
so it's a you will bear the children for me situation.
Yes, and it is still kind of creepy and disturbing because she kind of does not give her a lot of choice in this matter. And
okay, well,
I will also point out that these particular events, if the show, let me do the math here. If the show is occurring in 1992, what's 13 years before 1992? 13 or 14 years before 1992, like 1979, 78.
Yeah, something like that.
Right as Gundam was airing.
Yeah, so in 1978, 1979, they do not have the fertility options that they have in the present day. Let's put it that way. So the only way this is going to work is if she convinces their housekeeper to sleep with her husband, basically. And she tries to, like, trick her husband into thinking it's her. But then it all falls. Obviously, this is a terrible plan, right?
Yeah.
And it all it immediately falls apart because her husband, like, knows it's not her, but plays along anyway.
Because of his crazy domineering wife, like.
And he's like, secretly in love with the housekeeper or whatever, and it's a mess. It's a hot mess, but nevertheless, she does get pregnant, and she has triplets. My guess was correct that the son was Migi and Dali's other brother,
right?
And the crazy mother, like, decides to take one of the boys has, like, dark hair, and she decides to take that one to raise as her son, but she can't have the housekeeper and the other 2 boys, like, appear in public because it'll ruin their perfect image. And so she just keeps them locked in a room for years.
That's okay. Yeah, that's normal.
And that's what kind of leads up to the crazy events that we see later with them running away and living in the woods and all that stuff, right? And eventually she goes back. It's when she goes back to get the other kid. She's, like, climbing up his window, and he, like, accidentally or whatever pushes her out the window. Right. And that's how she dies.
Right. Okay. Sure.
So that's all the secrets revealed. That's basically what has happened, and this has now led up to the rather crazy final few episodes where they're trying to kind of pin this all on the mom, and the mom is like a ninja, basically.
Right.
And she's like, she murdered it, and, like, it kind of calls back to they've made a big point of that their current housekeeper that ends up getting murdered is not conventionally attractive in any way whatsoever, and it's like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense. Weirdly enough, the husband has almost no role or responsibility in any of this, which was kind of messed up.
Is he, like, even a character, or
not really? Yeah.
Okay.
He's still there.
Sure. All right.
He's not really doing anything, but and then
Mr. Plot Device. Look.
Yeah, and they reveal, I think she has a daughter, but I think she just, like, straight up kidnapped her from somewhere.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's definitely the bad guy, and the boys are trying to record her confession and stuff, and it all falls apart because she's like a ninja, and we leave off on, I'm not going to say where we left off. Let's just say what I'm assuming will be the final episode is going to have to deal with the aftermath of all of this information coming out. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think in particular the bit, because like I said, the one thing that they didn't really explain yet was like what was their mother's role in this house and everything, and everybody was just like, oh well, maybe she was just like the mistress or the housekeeper or something, and I was like, it can't be that simple, right? And I'm like, no, well, it was, but
yeah, I
think everything else though was on top of that was still so weird and fascinating that I'm not too hung up on that, but it's still very dark and disturbing. It's not I guess it's not as simple as her husband was cheating on her with the housekeeper, right? Like it was a little more disturbing and complicated than that. So especially when the locking everybody in the room, it kind of weirdly makes some of the baby stuff make sense. I don't know, man, but it's anyway, it's been a wild ride. I suspect, again, since things have been happening predictably, it's going to probably end up in the end where the boys clear their name, which, if you recall, last time I mentioned they were being accused of murdering the housekeeper.
The current housekeeper.
Even though the mom is the one that did it, that she tried to pin it on the boys by like leaving the knife in their room or something. Right. And so I suspect their name will be cleared somehow, and their adoptive parents, who still don't know that there's two of them, will still love them anyway, even though and they'll get to enjoy their the rest of their days baking cherry pies together. So that's what I'm expecting will happen in the end. Part of me is kind of hoping there will be at least some twist left, but I feel like that's kind of our, now that everything's out in the open and it is what it is. So
you don't think this show will have some sort of like dark stinger?
It could. I'm not ruling it out.
The monster still lives, right?
Yeah. I'm not ruling it out. I think it's like a 75% chance that it goes the way I just said, but I'm not ruling it out entirely. Like there still could be something, one last curveball in the end here. But that all said, even if it does end in that sort of way, it was a great show. I really enjoyed it.
That's good.
I feel like it has a really good, I love that it's a beginning and an end. I think it's really well paced. I don't feel like there's any like unnecessary filler or anything. Like everything kind of has a point
right
to it. Even the things that feel like dumb throwaway filler episodes, like hanging out with Bird Boy and all that, like it all comes back. It all comes back in some way.
Right. It was all needed to get to the heart of the mystery.
Did those like weirdo neighbors did these various weird denizens like come back in the last episode?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Climax to each contribute their one thing to aiding the heroes.
The Beaver Kid ends up being kind of the MVP of the entire show.
Word.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Like even though his first interaction, like he was the one, if you guys remember, that was like tying up one of the boys' like hands and forcing him to play like rigged rock paper scissors and like smacking him in the face and stuff. He was like terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And through various different events, he kind of turns around and ends up being like the MVP in the final segment. But
sure.
All right.
Yeah. The point is like it's a very, I felt like it was a pretty well told story. The whole way it manages to keep walking that tightrope between being like creepy and weird and disturbing and also still funny, without leaning too far one way or the other. I like, when I was concerned, are they really gonna like go through with like people actually getting murdered and stuff? Oh no, yeah, people that maid got stabbed in the neck. Like it's there are other people that get stabbed. Like they don't pull any punches when it comes to like that stuff. So like I appreciated that they still managed to keep it balanced between the almost like thriller horror element type things too with the humor, and it's very well done. So unless they really blow up the ending, which I don't know how, I don't even see how they would even do that. Like I'm really high on this show, so I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Okay, let's talk about Artemis again. You're with us, so we can talk about Yuzuki family's 4 sons. Did this show find a way to end, or is there?
So this one also has one more episode to go next week.
Okay.
I did not care for the previous episode at all. It annoyed me a lot. I'm back to being annoyed with this show.
Oh well.
It was. You'll know. I'm just going to say 2 words, and you're going to know exactly how it goes.
Oh dear.
Sick episode.
Sick episode.
Who is sick?
Sick episode.
Yeah.
Like the oldest brother, but he's the caretaker.
Oh, okay.
But he got a cold, but it's an anime cold. So he's lying in bed. He has an intense fever. He's doing it like this, like
you have to all comically
like
scramble,
heavy breathing as though he's in labor or something. Like
could perish at any moment.
Right, like at one point near the end of the episode, his fever doesn't go down. So oh no, I guess we have to take him to the hospital. Like, let's go, or the clinic, or whatever. It annoyed me. It bothered me. It was just so predictable. And I know the show is predictable. Like, I get it. It's not meant to be, the kind of innovative show that's going to break the wheel of
there are levels to this,
or anything. Right? Sure, it's not. I understand, but even with that in mind, it was just so by the numbers. Obviously, the fact that it's the older brother means that all the other kids have to step up and show that yes, they can also cook breakfast and do the laundry or whatever. It was just
overly saccharine.
It was one of the more pointless episodes of the entire series.
Right.
We know by now how integral the older brother is to the family because he is the parent figure, right? He is the one paying the bills and the one making sure that they can all live there because he's the only one old enough to have custody of 3 children.
Right.
So but this is all understood. We don't need a very dramatic cold to drive this point home. And I felt like it was a real waste of
sort of
literally anything
the
else.
point,
Anything.
right?
Anything else. Because I do like the character, and his previous episode where he went to a school reunion was pretty good. And I just thought they could have done any other storyline and it would have been a better choice.
Right.
So they are not choosing to do any dramatic 2-episode finale thing or anything here.
No, there's not. No, I don't even remember what the final episode is going to be about. I don't remember if they even showed a preview of it. I kind of, by the halfway point of the episode, I was watching it, but I wasn't really invested. So I'll watch the last episode because it seems weird not to watch one final episode of something.
Yeah,
but it really.
What is the most cliche thing they could possibly do in the last episode? I don't even know.
The most cliche thing. I mean, it'll probably. I don't know.
See what I would have done. I would have set this up in the second to last episode, where they're uncle or somebody. It's oh, hey, you don't have to take care of the kids anymore.
Right.
I'm gonna take the custody or whatever.
Something will threaten to break the family apart.
I think I don't think they're going to be that dramatic. And I feel like they made it clear fairly early on in the series that there kind of already was a sort of brief, not custody battle, but a brief at the funeral. They were, all the relatives were no, you cannot possibly. You are too young. There is no way you could support this whole family alone. It's too much for you, kind of thing.
I feel like I feel like something like that would have been the most cliche way to end this. But.
Right. I think if anything, they'll go the other route and just do a really basic and now they all go to relax at the beach for a vacation or something.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think anything super dramatic is going to happen. I don't think it should.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I actually don't really care anymore what happens, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm sure the final episode will be fine. largely the series has been fine. It's just had its ups and downs, and unfortunately, the previous episode was for me a real down, just because of how utterly by the books it was. So
yeah, just giving you nothing.
That's kind of all I have to say about it, honestly.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
righty.
At least that one's not continuing. So
yeah. And if it does, let the record show I will not be watching a season 2.
All right.
I think that's the ultimate judgment there. Then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess speaking of not caring anymore, let's. Oh, you know what? Before we get to that, G, did you want to talk about? I took it off the list last time because you weren't here. The racing show. What's it called?
Oh, Overtake.
Overtake.
That's very considerate of you to ask. No, I'm not watching it anymore. So
okay, well,
okay,
I just remember because it would usually go here, and I was like, oh right, I took it off because you wasn't here last time. But yes,
just, I mean, I don't know. Look, man, it's been a few weeks now. I don't know, man.
Once you fell off the wagon, you didn't want to get back on.
I just was not compelled enough to get back on. Like I think the last episode I watched, right, it was like, because of the crash during the rainy race, like.
Yeah, I think we talked about that one.
It was like, all the like emotional like strides they made has come crashing back down. They're back to square one, and they have to rebuild themselves. And it's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm honestly good.
All right. Well, what about Bullbuster?
Well, what about Bullbuster?
The not launched Bullbuster. Like,
did they?
Dude, I don't think Bullbuster's done anything in like 4 weeks, man.
Yeah.
So how does it look like they're wrapping this one up? Because this is not continuing, right?
There's the big corporate conspiracy where actually the company is intentionally creating these creatures so that they can like harvest the like brain stem cells for their new super internet technology or whatever. Yeah, like they're
making biocomputers or whatever.
Right, something like that. Basically, they're doing this. They're creating these things on purpose
for profit.
Right. Yep,
as corporations are wont to do.
Yep, and our plucky startup has to do something about it, and so it's been a couple episodes of them trying to do something about it and not having the money to do it. Right. Trying everything they can think of, live streaming, out fighting the monsters, and wheeling and dealing with other companies, and whatnot, and just being slapped down by Shioda's large amounts of capital and ability to hold press conferences that the mainstream media reports on. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like it could be interesting, and I appreciate the message, I guess, of you can't beat capitalism, but
right,
I don't know. It also could be incredibly boring, which is what I'm guessing it is.
I think that is the issue. Like, I think these plot developments in a vacuum make sense, and I actually would not mind seeing in this type of story at all. But, like, that's kind of all there is to this show, right? Like, to the point where it's like, the robot almost didn't need to exist. Like, because they do so little with that half of it, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Like for all the talk, like, we're doing our, like, comically realistic mecha series. Like, mecha is in the description. Like, like it's been a comically serious office comedy, office drama.
I hate to say this, but is the most realistic mecha show the one where you don't actually use the mecha?
That seems to be like the thesis of the show.
Like it's not worth even taking it out,
right? Because the show will continuously have the characters like look in the camera and be like, "We can't use Bullbuster this week; it's too impractical." And it's like, why?
Why are we doing this then?
Why did we do this then? Why did we make this story?
Because like Die Guard still has the and we're still going to launch the robot every week because underneath it all, thematically, we think the robot is cool.
Yes. And there's still it's still like a thing that only the robot can do, right? Like
like that is like the thing, like, you know, these other types of shows like a Diegard, like a Pat Labor, is like they skewer and they poke fun at the idea of like, man, like, you know, having a big robot stomping around downtown is a giant pain in the ass, actually. But like at the end of the day, it's like, but it's got to be this way because you know, who else is going to step up to the plate, right? But here in like Bullbuster, almost everything is being just done by the humans, right? Because their strategies are like going on social media and live streaming, and you know, their own like grassroots efforts, which is totally fine, but it just doesn't make it, because I think it's also those elements are not even that good, right? Like,
right. That's the other part of it.
The characters are not that likable, so it's like I'm not even like rooting for them that hard. And I mean, I think Bullbuster will get brought out in the last episode, but the preview shows them more or less like driving around a forklift or something.
Bull Rover. So, all right.
Yeah. So
I mean, that was always that's what I kept saying is like, I feel like you could accomplish the same thing if you had a Bobcat and a front end loader, and like, you basically have to be able to do the same thing that Bullbuster does.
That's almost like the implication that the last episode is going in, is that we don't even need Bullbuster to save the day, and then it's like, well,
conventional heavy equipment, bring it in.
Why did we
do the same job?
Name this show after it then?
Yeah.
I don't even know if Bull Duck is going to do anything. Like,
I know.
Like what? Why
can we launch can we sortie all three robots, please?
Yeah, right? Just at least once as a treat.
Yeah. Got tied.
Well, I'll give them some credit and guess that they will launch them all in the last episode.
I assume they will, but yeah, it's kind of turned into a slog at this point. Like, it's not bad. Yeah. I don't think it's like...
It's only like one episode left, I think. So
yeah.
We'll wrap it up, but...
Yes.
Another disappointment.
Yeah.
Well, I guess speaking of disappointments that I'm going to watch the last episode out of obligation for, let's talk about Under Ninja.
Yeah.
So we started last time. We kind of started the big, scare quotes, big climactic battle,
right?
With the Under Ninja launching their attack or whatever, and I think even putting aside what I talked about last time with my own personal aversion to watching children getting graphically murdered on screen, and how I didn't like the whole school shooter vibes, it just kind of sucks. So I'm going to go back to what you all were talking about with the shows we were previewing on, like, kind of organically and naturally growing your love for the characters,
right?
And say that absolutely none of that has happened in Under Ninja, the anime. Which, as a result, when we've hit this climactic final battle, where I feel like cool things should be happening. I mean, for God's sake, they have like a cardboard mech robot, and somehow it does like absolutely nothing. Like, it manages to hang on to the guy for like 30 seconds.
I know, right?
And he but he can squirm his way out of it somehow. Like it should be good, but like I don't feel like I feel like they wasted so much time in the beginning, not getting us to care about what's happening or any of the characters, so that now that the stakes are high, other than I guess we don't want to see children getting murdered. Like, I don't care about what's happening in this fight.
Yeah.
And then the action itself sucks. Like,
oh yeah, it's not a good looking show. It's clear. Yeah. I think in many ways, Under Ninja. Here's the thing: I'm not about to get out here and say, if the Under Ninja anime had been given a real budget, it really would have no. I'm not saying that. I think Under Ninja is more failed by just the reality that the story just works better as a manga. Like, I think. Or who knows? Maybe a really good adaptation would would enhance it in ways that I'm not currently imagining. But Under Ninja, the manga, is not an action-heavy series. It's not it doesn't really benefit much from visual spectacle. And I think just the way the anime is paced out also isn't doing it any favors, right? Because like the thing about like Under Ninja the manga is that like from chapter to chapter, it almost reads more like a slice of life, where occasionally really fucked up shit happens, and then it goes back to like day drinking in their apartment. And I think maybe anime is just not the format for Under Ninja, because like I am still reading it, so like for some reason the manga is working for me in ways the anime is not. But
I like the bits with them like day drinking and just being dirtbags and stuff like that's the good stuff, and I feel like we didn't get much of that on screen. Like those were kind of like my. Like I can see how this works. Like this, it's just something is not. It's like the puzzle pieces are there, and they did not assemble the puzzle correctly. Like that's what it feels like to me.
Here's the thing: I will say there is one character in this show that I think actually has organically endeared himself to the audience. It's Kuro. The problem is Kuro weirdly does not get a ton of screen time towards the end here. Right.
We spent like a whole episode and a half without him at all. Right. And it's like Kuro is like legitimately a really funny protagonist because they play up how much of a dirtbag he is, right? Yeah.
Bribing children with underwear and pissing himself because he has no shame, right? Like it's like so in weird ways, like Kuro is actually the one character where you're like, why would I like this piece of shit? And then by like episode 9, you're like, man, I love this piece of shit. And then he kind of
just doesn't show up. He's not doing that much.
Yeah.
I would argue throughout the whole show he doesn't get enough screen time. Like they spend so much time jumping around to like what happened a month ago and like all these other characters and like, but especially now when it should be like the big climactic moment. I think by the end of this second episode he's finally about to do something before they roll the credits, right? So like
I will also say like maybe it's a joke that like I appreciated more in the manga. I'm not even sure it is a joke, but like you were talking about like how like kind of garbage all the cool ninja stuff is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I kind of think sometimes that's the point.
Because... No. That's the one I was going to say. The one joke I enjoyed in all this is the fact that I do think they're very intentionally highlighting that Under Ninja has way better gear than the regular ninjas.
Right. All of Nin's shit is kind of shit, right? Like even Escape the Orbital Laser has only worked once in this entire show.
Like the bit with the where this is where you know it was like definitely intentional. The bit where
the sword, right?
Yeah, where Kuro gets the drone to bring him the sword.
Yeah,
and then the girl has like a rocket that launches.
Right. It's so good. It's so
like
good
that. Yes, that one aspect was very good. Yes,
that's one of those great bits where you're like, oh shit, what's he about to do with that ring? Right? Like, is he about to like? Are we gonna get like? Is he gonna summon some sort of like Metal Gear Rising crazy ass like cyber ninja rocket blade? No, it's just a katana sheath attached to a drone.
Yeah. And then he turns on his invisibility hoodie that only makes his top half invisible.
Yeah. Doesn't get his hands like
Ninja, immediately summons their even like also here's the thing, even the other ninja version, it's the same thing. It's just a rocket instead of a drone, which I guess is kind of cooler, but
yes.
It's just a way to
I think it was framed. I think it was framed to look like it was like much better, even though functionally it's the same thing, right? But
it's like same thing with like the box robot. It's like, wow, we have the technology to build a box mech. It's also complete dog shit.
Doesn't fucking work. Yeah.
So again, like there's pieces there. I understand most of the time the sense of humor. Like I kind of like. It's just. It has not been assembled into something.
No, I do
that
agree.
Works for me. I don't know, Ira, if you feel the same way exactly, or if you feel it's higher up on it. But
I'm probably a little higher on it than you. But it's like I'm like this show is a house of cards. It's like it's not really holding together in any way. I'm just broadly having a good time with the jokes, right? But
I mean, would you? I mean, would you
like?
would you also agree that like I'm ready for the show to be over? Like,
yeah, I guess I'm like I'm curious as to like how they're gonna wrap it up. But I'm not curious enough to see what happens beyond that. I don't think.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know, whatever. Like,
how will Kuro defeat this ninja juggernaut? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, but it's
and it's like whatever. I don't know, whatever we felt like they might be saying in the beginning about the working class Kuro being the working class hero here and all that, like that's all way gone out the window, at least in the anime,
right?
But yeah, I just at this point I feel like I'm getting nothing out of it. I'm just I'm kind of in the, well, I got one episode left, we got to finish it, but I was even kind of really struggling to get through these 2 episodes of like, let's get this done. But again, disappointing because I just like I see the pieces there, of something that could have been a lot of fun. And it's just not doing it for me.
Alas.
Yeah. All right.
Well, how about a show
Thankfully, we
can end pretty strongly.
Thankfully, we can end on something good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Pluto. I think because there were only 3 episodes left that we hadn't watched yet, we decided to just finish it because they're all out on Netflix. Pluto's really good, guys.
yeah, turns out.
I wasn't sure how they were gonna tie everything up in the last episode in a satisfying way, but I guess when your last episode's an hour long, you have a little more leeway. But yeah, the way they've managed to like tie everything together, somehow managed to throw in a last minute threat to the world. I mean, it's not really like last minute, but like the signs were kind of there leading up to it, but like the details don't come out until like the last episode.
There are definitely parts of Pluto where you realize, oh, like these are things that Urasawa had to adapt from the original Osamu Tezuka story.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like certain things that like maybe don't quite mesh as elegantly as you would expect them to kind of show up because, well, that's what happened in the original story, and you can't have a story about the world's strongest robots without Bora. So here he is.
Although Bora is greatly expanded in power level, let's say.
I mean, I was gonna say the fact that they can throw that in there and it still doesn't feel like I wasn't like disappointed or anything. Like I didn't feel like it was.
I think even when like
that
the
far out of place.
Right, like I think even when the threat Bora represents to the world is introduced somewhat last minute, like they do a good job of setting up all the other reveals that happened before that, and so it kind of feels like they flow naturally into each other. We don't need to like give the play-by-play of these last 3 episodes, right?
Yeah,
but this is kind of the moment where all the chips are kind of coming down, right? Obviously the big one. Again, spoilers for the ending of Pluto, or the original Osamu Tezuka story, the world's strongest robot. Geshik dies, right? He is killed by he's assassinated.
Or well, not
by Pluto taking over. But, well, is it Pluto or is it Abula, right? Taking over the body of the handicapped robot that he meets in Persia. Right. So again,
I think Epsilon also dies in this.
Yes, Epsilon also dies, and it's a shame that like we almost have to talk about these 3 episodes and our final thoughts because there's so many things I could say about like the passing of these 2 characters, right? The last 2 of the world's strongest robots. Like here's the thing: as someone who did not read the original Tezuka story before I read Pluto, Geshik's death hit me like a truck, man. Like it's so sudden, right? It's like gunned down in the street,
and they're able to kind of frame it in the anime because it's an anime, like where like before you see what happened, what happened. Yeah, like it's a lot.
Yeah, and like and then sort of like the way in which like Urasawa weaves that into Adam's resurrection, right? They play up the whole like, oh, we managed to retrieve the memory chip from Geshikt, right? And the whole like idea, right, is that not Tezuka, Tenma, Dr. Tenma believes or knows that the only way to revive a catatonic robot is to induce imbalanced emotions into it, right? To essentially force a robot to go sicko mode. And so the theory, right, is that Geshikt must have felt such hatred in his heart the moment he died that should be a sufficiently strong emotion to will Adam back to life, hungry for revenge against Pluto, who has now killed the other 6 strongest robots. You know?
And then having the basically putting the trust in Adam to be able to handle it, right?
Yes, right. And it's so good, right? Because Adam awakens, his eyes, right? Those fucking dead eyes he has, right? Just filled with malice. And you, the viewer, are kind of like, oh shit, what have we done? Right? Like, we've turned, like, the world's
good little boy,
little good robot boy into a fucking like murderer, right?
Yeah.
And they really kind of play up that tension until, of course, the reveal that Geshikt's last emotion was not hatred; it was sorrow, right? It was Geshikt felt so deeply sad about the human condition, about the nature of the robots, right? The cycle of hatred and violence that allowed such tragedies to occur, right? The tragedy that he will never see his wife again, right? And so those are the emotions that temper like the violence and hatred that also resided in Geshikt and as a result in Adam. And dog, I love when robots start musing about the human condition. It's my favorite thing in fiction.
I feel like, because, I mean, the whole transhumanism thing gets done a lot, and particularly we tend to encounter a lot of these stories because we like them, right? But I feel like this is definitely one of the best ones, in my opinion, like, as far as using it as a mirror on the nature of humans and what makes people human, and
right.
And I find it interesting because it manages to convey very, like, I don't know if it's say complex, but like heavy, meaningful themes in those areas. But when I really think about it, like, the storytelling is very simple.
Yeah.
Like, even the dialogue is very like straightforward, almost blunt sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like, there's surprises, but like, I don't know, it feels very like simple structured and everything, but it's like there's no, I don't think I'm doing a very good job of explaining this, so I hope everyone kind of, if you watch the show, I hope you kind of understand the vibes I'm going for here on this. But there's no like fancy dialogue, or even when they do kind of info dump a little bit, it doesn't, there's not a lot too much of it, but they still manage to come across.
It does not bother to obfuscate its themes.
Right. Yeah. There's no like, there's not a lot of like what I would traditionally call like symbolism in an abstract way. Right. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but it's just so effective. Like, I was thinking of one of the moments that really stood out to me in the ending was when Adam meets with Geshik's wife.
Right.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, don't be silly, robots can't lie," and then proceeds to lie. Everything he says after that is a lie. And like, they like, it, even she knows it, she says it at the end, like, it makes you think of a lot about the themes they're going, what the message they're trying to send here about the nature of humans and all that. But so yeah, I mean, you get that. The fight with Pluto is pretty cool.
There's exactly one fight in Pluto, and
yep.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I mean, it was certainly well animated. They saved up for it. And yeah, I just I want to shout out the moment that they tell Dr. Tenma to go touch grass.
I do love Ochanomizu and the way he's portrayed in the story, and like the way in which like
that moment was great for him, where he's like, you know, because Tenma's kind of like everything's Tenma's saying about, you know, basically you needing to have negative emotions to be human. That's part of being human. And, you know, which is basically saying, okay, but also part of being human is, you know, standing up and fighting even when it's, you know, seems hopeless and all, right? Like,
and in many ways that even translates to like Ochanomizu says something like, you know, it may be inevitable, but we still must try, right?
Right.
And then later, Adam also
like,
says,
the world's only doomed in theory.
Right, in theory. That's what he says. The world's only doomed in theory, right? And then Adam is like, I only have 5 minutes to fight Bora before I melt down. It should be impossible in theory, but I have to do it anyways. And that is a moment where you realize that Adam is now more Ochanomizu's son than Tenma, right?
Right.
Like, it's a really great way to communicate, like, how, like, because again, Ochanomizu doesn't get that much screen time in Pluto, but every time he is on screen, you kind of get the feel for like how much of Adam's humanity was imparted on him by his like foster, you know, father, caretaker.
Yeah.
And how much of Adam's inherent goodness, his inherent compassion for his fellow man and robot comes from Ochanomizu as well. And so it means that like Pluto, like it's a very dour work, right? It's a very cynical one. I mean, the ending of the story is literally Adam like looking at the camera and saying, like, can the human condition ever like change? And all Ochanomizu can say is, I don't know. I hope so.
Pretty damning condemnation of the United States as well. But
like, right. Like the show also makes sure to make you understand in the last episode, right? Like, yes, did Abula create Goji, who then in turn becomes the new Abula, right? Did he put Sahad into Pluto? Did Pluto kill the 6 greatest robots on Earth? Yes, but who predicated this, right? Who allowed it to happen? And then who knowingly abetted in it? It was America. It was the United States of America, its president, and its super AI entombed inside of a teddy bear.
Yeah. Again, just we already talked about how bold this would have been to the statement in 2003, right? But there's no uncertain terms about that in that aspect of it. But yeah,
it's wild. The story's just core thesis. Like at the end of the day, it can all be agreed. America is largely squarely to blame for the problems and conflicts in the Middle East.
Yep.
Yeah, basically,
it's true.
Yep.
Yeah, Pluto. I'm amazed they pulled it off, man. Like, I think, you know, broadly, you know, I still probably prefer the manga, but I think the anime does an exemplary job of capturing like the best things about that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is there anything you think they could have done better? I mean, other than
there is one.
Okay.
That I realized had been fully excised from the show as we watched the last episode.
Okay.
There's a scene in the manga where Dr. Ochanomizu is on the phone discussing a prototype flying car with the investors or whoever like is responsible for the manufacturing of his inventions. And the manufacturer wants to remove the flappy dog ears that are attached to the roof of this flying car. And Dr. Ochanomizu is vehemently arguing that no, the flappy dog ears must stay on the car, that it's core to the design and appeal of the Ochanomizu designed flying car. This scene is nowhere to be seen in the Pluto anime.
That is extremely disappointing.
God, I forgot about
Ira,
that.
how about you? What do you think as far as the adaptation?
It seems solid. I think there's definitely that dip in the middle episodes where, like, you can tell they put all of the money into the first episode and the last the last two episodes, and it's like around episode 3 and 4. I was watching and being like, oh, this is kind of doesn't look that great.
Yeah.
Which, like, that's just how anime is, I guess. But
it did not look amazing all the time, for sure.
And, like,
I mean, it never looked bad. It
shouldn't have to, but yeah.
Yeah, I never thought it looked bad, but there were definitely like I feel like the last episode looked a lot better than, you know.
I mean, like, most of the show is just adult men standing in rooms talking. So,
right, yes.
Our favorite genre of anime.
Our favorite genre of show.
Yeah,
middle-aged men talking about.
Doesn't always have to look super good, but
yeah.
But I think even in its quieter moments, sometimes it still does not, like, the fidelity is still not quite there. But
yeah,
but I think broadly, like, I mean, Pluto was like number 1 on many of our lists of, like, this is never getting an anime, like, it can't be done, like, just straight up. And the fact that they pulled it off, and they pulled it off pretty well, I think is worthy of applause, honestly. Like, it is like such an ambitious story to tackle, and the fact that they mostly stuck the landing, I think is really awesome. I like, Pluto is one of those, like, I'm going to be clear. Pluto is obviously not the first Our Robots People story, right? Clearly not, right? Like, it comes in a long line of this type of story. But when you think about it being released in 2003, and then you think about, like, what comes out after that, like, Pluto is in many ways the progenitor of the specific approach to this style story of, like, sad robots being melancholy about the human condition. like you don't get to Nier Automata without something like Pluto being there first, right?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about the end credits of Nier Automata and the song and everything. Like, that's literally what Oshimizu just said, right? Like,
right?
Like,
yeah.
And it's cool. It's cool to have it, like, shown. You know, have it here for a modern audience. You know, it's depressing how much of it still hits, but it speaks to
a lot of it's still extremely poignant. As you know, we talked about when we first talked about the show, just. But between both the AI conversations going on and then the current situation in the Middle East, it's some of the imagery was like, oh my god, I just saw that on the news 10 minutes ago,
right? Yeah,
you know, so
go ahead.
Yeah, just again, kind of depressing that it's still that relevant, but
yeah. And before we, like, close this here, I do want to bring up something that Iro brought up to me the other day. If you want to talk about it, like,
what did I bring up to the other day?
Sorry, I was trying to tee this up for you. Like, Pluto is this amazing story, right? Like, it's this amazing telling of, like, you know, robots as people, and maybe more importantly, right? Like, I think often, like, here's the thing: we love it when a robot asks, "What does it mean to be human?" I think we all love it even more when the robot was always human and only begins to realize it, you know, as the story progresses, right? Like, you know, Geshikt, all of them, Adam, Geshikt, all of them, they were human from episode 1, right? They were always people, right? Like, whether they believed it themselves or not, right? They had these feelings in them,
whether the people around them believed it or not. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I love it for those reasons. And you know, a lot of this is in that original Tezuka story too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think it's very easy to look at Pluto because of its very self-serious presentation and go, wow, Pluto really cleaned up that old Tezuka story. And it's like, no, bro, the original Tezuka story is about a deposed Middle Eastern leader hungry for revenge against the Western powers that wronged him.
Yeah.
You'll have
wants to kill all of the world's strongest robots to prove that they have the world's strongest robot.
You'll have to point me to where I can read that.
Yeah, I'll look into that for you later.
Finished the show, but
and like obviously the story is simpler because Tezuka was writing for a different time period and audience, but like,
right,
so much of that is just there, and it's like. Tezuka was just as much informed by the politics of his time as Urasawa was by his, and I don't know. I think it's impressive how like thematically on point that makes Pluto.
At what point would he have written that? Would that have been in the 60s? I'm just trying.
Oh boy, I'd have to look it up, right? Like,
yeah. I mean,
yeah. Let's see here. It would have been in 64-ish, 64 to 65 was that arc.
Yeah, it's like depressing as some of these things are still relevant, but also maybe that in the big picture of history, not that long ago. So depends on how you look at it, I guess. Either way, just really impressed with Pluto. I know as we are getting into our best anime of the year discussions, it'll be in my discussion for sure. I have not done my list yet, even as we're rapidly approaching that time, but it's in the running.
Who went out in the end? Sad robots or sad Vikings? Stay tuned.
Oh my goodness.
All right. I will say I still have like half of Vinland Saga Season 2 left to watch.
Fair.
Like halfway through it. So
I cannot think of a worse show you would want to marathon.
Just like it's too like dour. Like
have you watched it, Artemis, at all? Or
oh yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Okay,
yeah. When it was airing,
I can't remember.
And once a week was almost too much for me.
Yeah, if you remember some of those conversations we had on the podcast about some of those episodes.
Like, so
I can't imagine trying to shotgun those in quick succession.
Unfortunately, that is the reality I'm forced with at the moment if I want to finish it before the end of the year here. So I'm going to probably have to marathon that in the next couple days here.
Well, between Pluto and Vinland Saga, really just drowning yourselves in the depths of human misery.
Yeah, I'm gonna need an anime break after this week, I think. But
yeah, maybe save the last episode of Spy Family till after that, just so you have something to finish off with that doesn't want to make you drown yourself in the bathtub or something.
Yeah. So, because I've got I think I'm supposed to have my post done by like Saturday or something.
I'm plugging away.
I haven't even written anything yet. I have like an outline, but it's fortunately I'm off this week. I'm off from work this week, so I'll have some time. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode. I think probably for the podcast for this year. I haven't quite worked out the schedule, but I think we're probably not going to be able to record next time we normally would. But so yeah. I think next time you see us, we'll probably be talking top 10. That'll be exciting. I don't know what's going to win yet. No idea. But we'll see. So just general housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog and on co-host at Glorio. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Leave us a comment on your favorite shows this season and what you're looking forward to next season and whatever you want there. Just it's all the same for the algorithm. And then tell your friends, tell your enemies. And we'll catch everybody next time.